You're watching the Love Thy Neighbor Podcast Network.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, welcome to the Love Thy Neighbor Podcast Network. It's your host, Anthony Wilson, and I'm back again with a good friend from far away. And he'll tell you where he's at in a few minutes. But thank you for watching. And hopefully you guys have been enjoying the content. We've been putting out a lot of stuff lately. This was going to be a live episode, but we'll just do it the old-fashioned way. You guys will get this episode when it drops. So if you're listening via podcast, Apple, Spotify, please make sure you subscribe and follow. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, and join the channel. Join the channel. It helps us out a lot. You can contribute to the channel. That helps us out a lot. If you are able to click on the live chat, you can go into the live chat and make comments as this video or podcast audio is going forth. And so thank you again so much for your support. Love you guys. Praying for you. Keep praying for us. Let's get into this episode. So I want to welcome a good friend from far, far away. My good friend, missionary, pastor, just cool guy.
Oh, whoa. Hey,
Lucas Swisher. What's going on, brother?
Don't set me up too high now. You're getting these expectations. I'm a really cool guy. And after 10 minutes or so, they're going to be like, this guy, is he really cool? No, it's going great. And Anthony, it is fantastic to be with you again. This second episode was a long time in the making. We had a little bit of struggle, giving the people a peek behind the curtain. It's not always easy to coordinate schedules and life, especially when you're in another hemisphere, being as I'm in Brazil. I think there's 2 hours between us. And I know for me, I usually try to keep track of my friend's time zone so that I don't mess with them, because I know how confusing it can get. So once I got in my head you were in Colorado and that time zone, I was like, okay, I got 2 hours, between us, and just the past few weeks, month, however long it's been, it just, life happens, stuff happens, and between you going to the dentist and me overbooking myself with podcasting or ministry stuff or whatever, like, we just couldn't match it up. But you know what? Fifth time's a charm. We did it.
Yeah, we're here now, and we're going to enjoy some conversation, and hopefully those listening, you guys enjoyed it as well, because you'll probably have to really search back to find this first interview that we did, because it's been, like you said, a year, almost year and a half, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, a year and a half that we did that interview, and things haven't changed too much. I mean, we're not in a lockdown.
Yeah, that's true.
There's some freedom since the last time we talked, to go and people have gotten vaccines. I mean, when I think back to when we did that interview, the world was actually different.
It was very different. A lot has changed since then.
I remember talking to you about, even people coming to Brazil. I think you were saying it was like 6 weeks or something, they had to wait before they can even try to come into the country or leave, or I can't remember what it was, but it was kind of hard to get over there because, you had to be vaccinated, and there wasn't any vaccine just quite yet.
Right.
Man, definitely was a different world. Well, how are things going? How's the family? How's work? How's life going in Brazil these days?
All right. Well, like you said, Anthony, a lot's changed. I'm trying to think back, my whole family and I have gotten vaccinated. We actually went to the U.S. once, I think, since the last time
Wow.
we talked, got to visit family. It was actually the first time since living in Brazil. We've been here for the past 10 years as missionaries. It was the first time that we actually went home just for vacation to
Wow.
visit family. We didn't do any kind of church tours or, you know, raise awareness or whatever. We just enjoyed our family, enjoyed being in the US. I mean, as much as we could, given it was winter. And I don't remember if I told you the last time we recorded together, but I am not a fan of the cold. And
No,
it
you
makes
didn't.
sense why I am where I am. You know, you talking about you're in Colorado. I'm like, I am willing to visit you, Anthony, like 3 months out of the year. I would totally go see you, meet your family, hang out. But those other 9 months, sorry, man, I just can't. Just can't. You got snow on mountains and you got beautiful landscape,
That's what I was
but
gonna say. It looks beautiful, right?
it looks beautiful. And when I was a kid, I loved the snow. I loved the cold. Oftentimes that meant I didn't have to go to school, play outside, making snowmen, snowball fights, etc. But when I became an adult, I started driving in the snow. I started dealing with heating bills as an adult. And now being in Brazil, where majority of people don't have insulation, they don't have central heating. So the temperature outside very often is the same temperature inside. So that we have concrete walls and windows to block the airflow. So you can kind of control by opening and closing your windows, but eventually if it stays cold for a not suspended, for a consistent, for days, your house temperature drops. And let me tell you, 60 degrees inside of a house is not fun. There's no escape. You can cover yourself in blankets. We have space heaters that we use that help, but man, your perspective really changes when you're in a different condition, different ambiance, as it were. So
yeah, when when there's actually no central heating and that luxury that we have.
yeah, yeah, it's totally different. But yeah, with my family and I getting back on track, you didn't invite me on here to talk about weather and Brazilian lack of insulation in central air. The family and I are doing pretty well. We've it was not a fast change for us in terms of outside of getting vaccinated, visiting the U.S., seeing how different it was in the U.S. compared to Brazil. Like Brazil was much more conservative in terms of their steps back to normal life. I would say for the most part, life has gotten back to the new normal. In public transit and different hospitals, people still are expected to wear masks. Majority of people are vaccinated. I don't think there are of course, much like in the U.S., there are arguments and political aspects of the vaccine, but for the most part, it's a little more chill, I would say, here in Brazil when it comes to that. And with my family and I, we've been taking steps in the right direction. I want to say this year I had a mission trip, a mission group come in June and July from Oklahoma, which was the first since 2019.
Wow.
It was great. I had to definitely shake the rust off, in my ministry and the things I do as a pastor and missionary. Really, I try to pastor both sides of mission projects and trips. So I coordinate mission trips between Brazilians with Brazilians and Americans. And even I could with other countries, but I don't have a whole lot of personal contacts with other countries. But Americans coming to Brazil is the most common one I've done in the past. And that kind of cross-cultural just collision is one of my favorite things to experience. It's my favorite atmosphere from which to teach, to encourage people in their spiritual growth. I often said during this last mission project that we were just practicing for heaven, and we were increasing the amount of people that we're going to recognize when we walk through those pearly gates, as they're called. We're going to see familiar faces. One of the things that I mentioned in one of our despedidas, one of our going away parties, which actually brought some of us to tears, was I talked about how when we get to heaven, it's kind of like, you get into go to a party by yourself, and you walk in, and there's nothing like that joy and relief when you see somebody. And I talked about how now these Americans that came, these Brazilians that hosted them. When we get to heaven, you're going to walk into the party and you're going to see each other and know each other and get to hang out for the rest of eternity. And that was just such a powerful moment. And that's like the moments that I live for and why I do missions, because there's no reason to wait till we're dead and we're in heaven to intermix with other cultures and get to know other cultures and learn their perspectives and practice languages, like singing in English, Portuguese, and Spanish all at the same time.
At the same time, wow.
Can be crazy and can be messy if you're not used to it. But at the same time, it's so rich and wonderful. So that's been a blast to do that again. I actually, here in a day, I'm going to be traveling to further inland and going to a city called Morungaba. That's going to be receiving a church, a small group of 6 people from Bel Air, Maryland. And they're going to be doing a vision mission trip, which is pretty much a getting to know you mission trip, setting up a long-term relationship. So it's exciting.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into kind of the nuts and bolts of that exchange and, how somebody, would plan a mission trip or how that would work. We're going to get into that. Before we get into that, I do want to take a quick sidebar.
Okay.
So you have, when I met you, you were doing a podcast called Good Morning God.
Yep.
And that podcast actually came from another podcast project that you were doing called the Good Morning Guys, maybe?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. And so
you got it.
And so that podcast is still going. And you guys do some interesting stuff on there. Now I know you're not always on there, but you're on there pretty often. And just recently I had caught the episode where you guys were talking about some TV shows. You guys talk about TV shows, games, I don't know, comic books, this stuff. It's just really stuff. Kind of share, how that blends with what you do. How does
great.
How do you,
that's
how
a great
does that
question.
come forward? Yeah, because I think it's really fun when I checked out some of the episodes. I was like, these guys are having fun, right?
Right.
So how does that play into, or how does that blend with what you do?
So the whole podcasting scene, and probably I can't remember if I talked about the Good Morning Guys. I know I talked about Good Morning God because that's how we got connected.
Yeah,
was through that podcast that is currently dormant, but it is not gone. So I'm bringing it back. You're my accountability partner with that. So I appreciate you bringing that back and reminding me that I've been a slacker when it comes to that. I actually have recorded an episode and I just haven't done the finishing touches to then post it. To me, the easy part is just coming up with, just kind of allowing God to speak through me and the ideas and just put them out there. It's the finer points, the editing and cutting and the putting it all together and then posting it is where I ride the struggle bus. But to answer your question directly, I apologize. I have a tendency to talk around questions and then finally answer the question eventually when the Spirit leads. The way that the Good Morning Guys, the community that we have, focusing a lot on the game of life and the games we love to watch and play is pretty much what is like one of our slogans that we do. We always start out our episodes talking about our update, what's been going on. And then we also share our joiners, which are what we call our listeners. We share what's going on with them and talk about it. And then usually we have a follow-up, a mini episode that talks about She-Hulk or talks about Marvel, talks about video games, whatever. And the area in which this kind of intersects with ministry, with pastoring, with missions is that, one, we interact with people all over the world. We build a relationship with a variety of people who come and listen, and they don't just passively listen, but they interact, they give feedback. They have we get more of those moments where, oh, I'm watching that show too, or I'm playing that game too. And you kind of have this intersection point to where you can then continue the conversation and talk about other things. I'll be honest and say that there are times where, especially because we record kind of late at night, that I'm not always on my A game, and I can be kind of sillier than I want to be. I sometimes lack in the seriousness, or but at the same time, it's more privately, where I'm praying with people, where I'm encouraging people. I kind of save that for the behind the scenes stuff that's not on the podcast, not on purpose, but just I don't want to force anything. And there are times when I will bring up God, I will bring up the Bible, I will bring up something that intersects with me as a missionary or whatever in what we're talking about, especially in some of the shows and video games that we've experienced, that where I see a clear message and want to share, connect it to God. I definitely do that often. But the community building, the getting an in on the lives of some people that would not even come close to a church, that would not even give a Christian the time of day to talk about God with them. It's kind of like my in. It's my hanging out and partying with sinners and, quote unquote sinners, like just, what the Pharisees accused Jesus of doing. Like that's what it's not the main reason I do it. It's I enjoy those things, and I enjoy just being around people. I'm not like trying to force some kind of like artificial digital evangelism.
Right.
I want it to come naturally. I want it to come through relationship. And so that's really where it intersects best, is you have these people that they don't want to plug into the world of church or the world of religion, but they'll plug into video games, they'll plug into entertainment. And unfortunately, we will say, you're spending too much time doing that, that's an idol, etc. But if I can be plugged into it enough to where I can help relate and draw them back, or connect them to God, or see, hey, you see that game you played that's talking about this kind of concept or this idea,
right?
Or just, you hang out with people long enough, they're eventually going to share their lives. And it's kind of like a parallel thing. Like we game together, we talk about stuff together, and then something happens in their life, and then they just share about it. And then I can respond in a deeper, more genuine way than maybe the world would respond, where they'll be like, you know what, it'll work out. It'll be fine. People just kind of throw in their cliches, and I try not to do that. Like I pray with people. I get to pray with people that maybe wouldn't pray. The other day, someone was struggling financially, and I got to, bless them financially, and then also talk with them and share Christ with them and witness to them, and just share how Christ offers freedom from, that kind of stuff, in terms of not having to live and die by your circumstances. And not that I'm doing some kind of like name it, claim it, blessings from on high for,
course, yeah.
You ask God and he will fill that bank account. That is not the direction I'm going. But yeah, so that's just a very long answer to how it all connects. And
No, I think it really helps to kind of shape that, because I have a friend who is a pastor and a gamer, and so he has a gaming channel, and and I would talk with him about it. I said, well, gamers need Jesus too, and so in your love for gaming, you have a great opportunity to reach out to people who may not ever come through the church doors, or may not ever have a real discussion about Jesus, but through your gaming channel, and they have access to your Discord, they can have conversations with you, and they can share like, well, hey, you're a pastor, what does that mean? Or what you, and he's had amazing opportunities to share Christ with them through gaming, and most people would not take that seriously, right? But it's definitely a mission field is definitely a place where people would be curious to have that conversation in their own environment, where they're not kind of made to feel like a sinner, that it's just regular. We both like gaming, and well, how are you a gamer, and what does God mean to you, and have that whole conversation. And so I thought it was interesting, because I don't think we talked about that last time, because I didn't know as much about the Good Morning Guys. You had mentioned it, but I had over the last couple of years, I've gotten to check out some episodes, and some see what you guys do. And so I thought it would be a great way to kind of let people see the other side, because they
Yeah.
think missionary, they think, okay, he's always about the gospel, he's always about, church, he's always about something spiritual. But, as pastors and leaders, um, we have our little things that we do. We watch TV, we watch Netflix, we watch,
Yeah.
it's we're regular people, even though we've devoted ourselves to something that's much bigger than ourselves, and that's this gospel of Jesus Christ, which is about eternity. And like you
Yep.
said, that you know, it's not a gimmick. It's actually the way that we live our life. And but there's other parts of our life, that we're
Right.
still that person, but I enjoy going to the movies. you know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
To me, it's all about it's all about where Paul writes about reconciliation, like bringing reconciliation. We want to bring reconciliation to people, of course. We want to reconcile friends, family, our neighbor to Christ, and to do our part to love them, care for them, be salt and light. But I think there's opportunity, and obviously there's limits, and obviously there's lines that we have to be careful with when we cross, and there's unhealthy practices. Um, in the realms, especially with what we're talking about with gaming, with people that are addicted to Netflix,
right.
and
Right.
but we're trying to bring redemption to that, to the point where at least there's some portion of it to where it's like, you know what, that has a message that we can capitalize on, that we can look at, and maybe it's not just like a God's truth kind of message. It's like a message of the struggle we have as humanity, or how we can be. There's like games like God of War and BioShock Infinite, two games that are about being a better father and sacrificing for your children, that people on paper would look at it and be like, that's a violent game, or that's a what's
Right.
weird.
Right.
And it's like, well, it is, and visually, if you're not used to that, it is weird. But and some of them are on the level of books, like in terms of their depth of story and message. And so getting to kind of talk about that, but also then run it parallel to God as our Father, is just mm, it's it's really it's redemptive ministry, and it's really really fun and really awesome when that all kind of clicks and the Holy Spirit guides what you're talking about, what you're experiencing. So yeah.
So yeah, definitely, definitely, and I thought it would be a great way to bring up and actually let people see that other side, because we're gonna dive into missions part of this. um
Hmm.
and so with COVID kind of shut down a lot of mission trips coming your way. And so you said, well, you basically had to shake the dust off and the rust off,
Right. Oh yeah.
to receive this new group. And so how did that go? Kind of walk us through how that trip went with them coming in, and were there any hangups, were there any struggles, were there any, give us some highs, lows, some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that of, how it pretty much went. I started in this position officially in 2017. I had unofficially been doing this kind of mission project, mission trip focus off and on in the first, I guess it would have been the first 5 years I was here. I mainly focused on teaching English in those first 5 years, where in the cities that we lived in. But then in 2017, 2018, shifted the focus to this. And each year leading up, 2017, we had one trip. 2018, we had two. 2019, we had three trips. And I was like, yeah, look at this. Every year we're growing, we're
Right,
building. And
right.
then, 2020 hits, and it's just like, it just
Right.
all, for the whole world, obviously. Well, I was definitely not alone in that. And some people adjusted well, some people didn't. I did not adjust well. I'm going to just be honest. I appreciate those who, like, I know the ministry I'm a part of, the church I'm a part of is the Church of the Nazarene. The ministry I'm a part of, it's called Work and Witness. It's kind of like the idea of doing a good work for God while also sharing your testimony and sharing the gospel. Other work and witness coordinators throughout the world, there were some others who started doing Zoom or digital work and witness trips. And I still don't exactly know how they worked, but they made them work. Like they had people on the Zoom of different cultures and had conversations, translation. Wow. It was more of a relational thing, which I appreciated, but I just never got off the ground with doing that. I really tried to focus on just sustaining some kind of local ministry, at least in the first year. And then that even struggled and fizzled out to the point where we kind of lost our momentum. But then fast forward to now, 2022, we had the first group come, and they're from a college in a university in Oklahoma called Southern Nazarene University. And it was actually the best first group to have back because they already have training. They already do things to prepare the students, the college age students to come. And so in that respect, it was a high because I didn't really have to outside of connecting with my work sites, what we were going to do, where we were going to do it, planning the calendar, the making some kind of, budget that definitely became a low later on. It went pretty seamlessly, like the setup and the going to, because they did their stuff on their end. I had my stuff on my end. It was like riding a bike. We went right back on it. But one thing that was definitely a low for me was just I did not adjust the financial side of things very well in terms of by the second of 3 weeks, I had just totally used up all the funds. Wow. Like I had used up all the main funds. And mainly it was because of gas, like renting church vans, driving those vans. And it was something that I did not, and this is one thing that is hard about missions, I think, is you have to figure out what is the balance between, especially when you're like, how much do I allow the culture and the people here to have not control, but to have the ability to indicate or direct what they're doing. And so like we went to 3 cities and each of those cities had a coordinator that I called a coordinator, someone that a point person that I worked with. I trusted in them to help me with, what exactly they were going to do there, what homes they were going to stay in. And so I kind of carried things from the way I'd left them and just was like mostly hands off. These are people I'd worked before, trusted them. And they didn't do anything to break that trust, but at the same time, they made some decisions that were much more expensive than I thought they should have been or would have been. And I didn't figure it out until after the fact. And thankfully, they were prepared, as in the American side. Southern Nazarene, SNU is the Southern Nazarene University is what I'll just call them from now on. But SNU was prepared for that. They had an emergency fund, which helped sustain us and got us to the end. Wow. It was slim pickings by the end in terms of like where we could go, what we could do, but for the most part, it worked out. And we weren't, begging on the street for funds to, get gasoline for the van or anything. It wasn't that bad, but we figured it out. That was probably the low. The high was, like I said, just getting to enjoy the cultures colliding. There are things about Americans that don't always jive with Brazilians and vice versa. One of those is Americans in general, as a whole, do not get close with strangers, do not hug, definitely do not kiss on the cheek or anything with strangers. You just don't walk up to someone and be like, hey, you look nice, I'm going to kiss you on the cheek and that kind of stuff. Yeah, just to get in there. Americans don't like that in general. And that's not just pandemic talking. That's that's always been the case in my experience anyways. Maybe some regions of the US, they're a little warmer and friendlier, but for the most part, the US is a little awkward when it comes to how to interact. Do we shake hands? Do we nod at each other? Do we high five? Like, what do we do? With people we don't know? Obviously with family, we hug. But even then, I know many American families that they don't even hug. They're just like, "Sup?" Like they just kind of look at each other. I'm like, and it's worse now post pandemic. So the high is, the really cool thing is when Americans are very resistant, or other Americans are like, everybody's so warm and friendly and huggy, and there's some aspect to human touch that I don't think we always realize is so important to fighting depression, fighting
Wow.
isolation. You
Hmm.
know, there are still, suicides, there are still depressed people in Brazil, but the statistics are far less than like in the US or in Europe, in some parts of Europe, where just individualism has reached the point where I have my space, you have yours. We do not cross that. And
Right.
people have gotten to the point where they're not comfortable and they're not willing to hug. They're not willing to touch each other. And that's unfortunate because we were made to touch in a non-weird,
Right.
romantic way.
Right.
I have brothers in Christ that kiss me on the cheek, and I have no problem with it. They're my brothers.
Right.
And there is no like, should we, shouldn't we? Like, why are we doing this? Like,
Right.
there's no question about it. And it's just, and the warmth and the joy that I feel in being in their presence is not even comparable. No offense to Americans or people I know in the US that I love and care for and that we hug. There's just no comparison. Like, it's just, and it's something that when I get to see a group of people who are either resistant or whatever, by the end they're like, I feel so welcome, and I haven't felt that in a long time. I feel so like connected to people and haven't felt that. So getting to experience that, be a part of that, coordinate that is, that's a big high. And again, practice for heaven, because you better be ready. There's going to be lots of hugging in heaven. There's going to be a lot of kissing. There's going to be a lot of togetherness, like people just holding on to each other. It's just, that's going to be the way it is. So be
Yeah.
prepared.
Yeah. So, roughly something like that, and you don't have to give me exact, but a group, the size, I don't know what size that group was, but what does that cost? I mean, for a group to come from America to Brazil for how many weeks? You said what, 3 weeks?
So I usually with SNU, I do a 3 week. This one
Mhm.
coming up this weekend is going to be a 5 or 6 day. So it ranges. It's usually between a week to 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
A week or a month. It usually. If you do more local, Work and Witness does national and local programs, which are like a weekend, a day. It's all about missions. So
Right.
it's you can be you can do missions, quote unquote, from like one city to another city,
Right.
and so one neighborhood to another neighborhood. Really, in some places, it's that
Yeah.
different. Um, but it's so before it was about $30 for Brazil. This is specific to Brazil. There are other places that are way more expensive. There are other places that are way cheaper. But
Hmm.
in Brazil, it used to be $30 a day per person, and that would cover food, transportation, everything that would take care of the person and some people to translate and to help other Brazilians
Right.
who were
Right.
involved. They
Right.
would get
Right.
paid for and taken care of. And then on top of that, you have project money, which varies a lot. It just depends on what project you're doing. If it's construction, if it's investing in a ministry, supporting a ministry that's already running, that kind of thing. And that can be anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 on average, or more,
Right.
depending on how much you can invest. But usually nowadays, I've discovered, and this is where I discovered, it's no longer $30 a day. It's more like $40 a day, which doesn't sound like a big jump, but that's like a quarter more of the price. And when you do 3 weeks of
Yeah.
$10 more per person, and then the currency between the U.S. and Brazil is 5 times. So every $1 is about 5 reais, which is the Brazilian
Hmm.
currency here.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so that just, it makes the gap huge. Like, it's a huge difference. So yeah, and then besides that is your plane ticket, which
Right.
can vary depending on how early you're
Time
searching
of
for it.
year, when you purchase
Yeah,
it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
exactly. But usually a plane ticket to Brazil can run around 800 is a really good price. 1,000's like the threshold where once it's past 1,000, you're 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 paying an okay price, but it's not the best. It's usually sub
Right.
1,000 is what you're looking for. Just to give you some of the numbers
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
how much
Yeah.
it costs. But
I actually watched, and I think they were in Brazil. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at that Netflix special again, but it was called Living on $40 a Day.
Yeah.
And it was some guys they went to, and I don't know exactly where they were at. I'm thinking it might have been Brazil, but it could be somewhere else. So don't quote me on that. But wherever they were living on $40 a day,
Yeah.
and they were like making it stretch. I mean,
Yeah.
it was really interesting. By the end of their trip, man, they were, hey, can you spare some change? I mean, it was rough. And so, coming from America, you think $40 a day, yeah, we probably just gas and going to get something to eat have already exceeded.
Right. Well, that's your problem. Yeah, if you go to get something to eat, you've already burnt through the $40.
You already burned through it.
Yeah.
So what is that like when you're there to focus on the mission, but maybe somebody's trying to, I don't know, treat it like a vacation. you know and it's like, how do
Mm,
you keep them from thinking, oh, we're supposed to go here and go, no, we're here for this mission. And like you said, the group that you brought in, they were already trained for this. So mentally, spiritually, emotionally, they're coming in
yeah,
with the idea that this is what we're doing. But what if
sure.
someone's never done this before and they begin to struggle? I don't know if you've ever had that, where
Oh, yeah.
somebody's come in and they're like, whoa, this is rougher than what I expected. What does that look like?
Yeah. I think I think one of the things that it sounds obvious, but uh maintaining a consistent devotional life while you're, a prayer and devotional life while you're on the mission trip it seems like it should be a no-brainer, but
Right.
you're in a new place, you're seeing new people, and you're a lot busier than you would be in your normal life back in the States, for an example, for this group that I had. So it's actually can be tougher to maintain a devotional life, but it's so vital to keep you with the right mindset. Even though they're trained, there's still people in the group that kind of have the mindset, or maybe they wouldn't say it's a
Right.
vacation, but they act
Right.
like, oh, I don't
Right.
like that. Oh, I don't
Right.
want to do that. Like
Yeah.
or just making a face like, oh, this doesn't seem fun. It's like, that's not why you're here.
That's not why you're here, right?
Yeah. And
So so give me a day. Give me a typical day,
okay.
for a person on the mission trip.
So, pretty much a typical day on a mission trip is you wake up, you have breakfast with your host family. One of the things I try to do, and it's backfired sometimes, is I try to do 2 by 2, like 2 Americans in a Brazilian household. Um, Sometimes I've had groups where they started out the trip all together in the church, kind of like a lock-in every day,
Mhm.
which was
Yeah.
dangerous because it was a lock-in and kids stayed up way too late and then could barely wake up in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And this is one that I wasn't the main one in charge. I was more partnering with them and there as like
Mhm.
a consultant and help with the as a translator and that kind of stuff. So I couldn't just be like, hey, 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, we're going to bed. And
Right. Right.
so that wasn't my call. So that was kind of hard to watch that and to see things unravel. But typically you wake up in the morning, 7, 8 o'clock, have breakfast with your Brazilian family, get to know them, chit chat, use Google Translator, of course, because there's no guarantee you're going to get someone that speaks English.
Right.
And then from there, meet at a location, whether at a church or a school, and then we do. In the case with this group, we usually had a ministry that we were working with that day, partnering with, and we supported that ministry by being available, giving a chance for the kids to practice English, or to, it's crazy, regardless of where the children are socio-economically, that kind of
Right.
thing. Most Brazilians love to practice or learn or hear English. Like, it's like their favorite foreign language. And that's probably thanks to, like we were talking about earlier, Netflix,
Yeah.
video
Right.
games,
Right.
movies, Marvel, whatever, Disney. That just, there's that connection where, you have kids that walk up to the students, the members of the team, they're like, do you know, I don't know, I'm trying to think something the kids, do you know, I'm showing my age, but do you know Tom Cruise? Like something like that,
Right,
you
right.
know, which, hey, Top Gun Maverick, possibly the best movie of 2022. Just
It
throwing
was
that
really
out
good.
there.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you have some interactions. Most of the ministries focus I usually have is partnering with other Brazilians, participating in the ministries they're already doing and supporting it presentially. And then by the end of the day or end of the week, the group has the opportunity to support it financially to invest in that ministry. That was most of it. But if you're doing a construction site, again, going to the site, doing some work till lunchtime, then we usually, the Brazilians will either make something or we'll go to a typical place where working people will go to eat something. Actually, one thing that's interesting that Americans have a hard time with is lunch is the biggest meal of the day.
Oh,
So we would go to a restaurant or they would provide, rice, beans, vegetables,
mhm.
a dessert, which sometimes the dessert would be, quote unquote, dessert would be oranges, like would be a fruit of
Yeah.
some kind. Other times it would be cake or something like that. And then usually that's all with Brazilians. So we usually try to have Brazilians working alongside the American group. And then in the afternoon, kind of repeating that. Sometimes, depending on the location, we would go to a different site to work and interact with other Brazilians and other ministries. And then at night, we usually every other night would trade between a group activity or being with the host families. And that was, again, to give them the day in the life of a Brazilian to really be immersed and learn, because there are some contexts in which we put them with families that are associated with a Christian organization, but they're not necessarily Christian.
Right.
And so it's a form of evangelism as well,
Yeah.
and getting to talk with them, pray for them, and that kind of stuff. So I would say the highest priority when I have groups here is relational evangelism, is really connecting with people, spending time with people. The work is secondary. The building or painting or cleaning up, whatever you're doing, those buildings are going to fall down. Those buildings are going to need cleaned again, need
Right.
painted again. But those relationships you form are eternal and or can be. So that's pretty much
Wow.
the day in the life of a
Yeah.
mission
Yeah.
trip, at least one that I run. So
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good. And like you said, you have the different projects and things that you're doing, but the biggest part is connecting with the people,
yeah,
connecting
exactly.
with, those that, like you said, you're going to know them for eternity. That's, this is a bond that you're building. And like you said, if they're not Christians, this is a great opportunity to
Yeah.
kind of connect in that way. So with those projects, you talk about painting and buildings. What are some of the projects that people do when they come?
Well, this last time, they worked with, let's see, one of the weeks, they split their time between a church compassionate project in a neighborhood, and then with a school that is run by Christians but is not officially Christian.
Mhm.
With the first church-run compassionate ministry, they went into a neighborhood, and every Saturday they do kind of like a, trying to think what you would call it. I don't even know what I call it in English or Portuguese in this moment, but they pretty much have a full morning into early afternoon of kind of rotating the kids into different um, focuses. So like there's a music class, there's a jujitsu class,
Hmm.
there's a sports or basketball or sport of the day class.
Mhm.
They give them a snack. And then they have like a devotional time, teach them a Bible verse. It's kind of like a long form vacation Bible school, but not with
Yeah.
like a theme, like, God's the real superhero, nothing
Right.
like that.
Right.
But
Right.
they sometimes have themes. But it's really to provide for kids in poor areas that don't get a snack, that barely get a meal, kids that aren't, going to be learning anything outside of what public school offers, which is very limited sometimes. I've talked to people in public school where in their English class, for the 4 years they're in high school, they learn the verb to be, and
Wow.
that's it. Like they
That's
don't,
it.
It doesn't go anywhere. They do the bare minimum. And that's not true for every teacher, not true for every public
Right.
school, but it's the typical experience where they're not getting opportunities to learn. In Brazil, there's no intramural activities. There's no sports between schools. They play soccer, but nothing's really that organized.
Right.
Um, and so they need to find a way to provide organized and good opportunities to teach them leadership skills, to teach them things that aren't offered in school, in public school, or in their neighborhood. So
So
that's
that's
one of the things
mhm.
they were a part of.
So that's even with, missionaries coming to Brazil for these many, many years. It still seems like there's that needs to be done. A lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of missionaries, there's not as much. The church is very developed, self-sufficient.
Hmm.
Um, on my side of things, and that's why I focus on mainly bringing Americans and connecting the cultures,
Hmm.
because there's not really anyone here in the country that does that very much, um, and or in a very consistent, organized way. So that's kind of where my role comes in, and where I get the opportunity to do that. But yeah, there are still areas that need consistent care, that need consistent interaction and love, and that kind of thing. And then there are other areas of Brazil, honestly, that the first city that I lived in, called Campinas, it has around 55 Nazarene churches of the
Wow.
denomination I'm a part of,
Wow.
in a city of 1.5 million, which is a lot. Because then I went to another city that only had 30,000 people, but it only had one Nazarene church. And then I now live in Sao Paulo, that has, in the greater area, like inner and outer city, has around 20 million people and only has around 25
Hmm.
Nazarene churches. So like it's really varied. There's a lot of Pentecostal churches. There's a lot of Baptist churches. There's a lot of Universal churches. There's some Latter-day Saints. There's a variety of churches and
Wow.
religions, and there's a variety of mosques. And Brazil is really a melting pot of cultures. It's
Yes.
something that is always eye-opening for the people that come to Brazil, to discover that the largest population of Germans outside of Germany is in Brazil.
Hmm.
The largest population of Japanese outside of Japan, also Brazil.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of like the mirror to the US, where the largest population of Chinese outside of China is in the US, and the largest population of Italians outside of Italy is in the US as well.
Yeah.
So we're very similar in that fact with the Brazilian people, and that melting pot of cultures. And you get to taste, I mean, I've had German food, I've had Italian, I've had Japanese, lots of different foods that I didn't even have in the US when I lived there. Granted, I'm from West Virginia, where, you know, our exotic food is something you pick up off the road and pick the gravel out of and cook it up. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's amazing. And I think at the end of the day, just knowing that, there's somebody out there like you that's trying to connect the cultures, that's trying to, bring people together of diverse cultures. I think it's important, because how else would anybody, get there without that connector?
Yeah.
You kind of being that connector. Yeah, that's a major deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm working to not just connect people, but also to bring balance, because if people's only connection to, if a Brazilian's only connection to the US is Netflix and the
Yeah.
news,
Right.
their view of the US is totally
They have
distorted. And it's
right,
the
they
same
have
the
no
other way
idea.
around.
And it's the
Like,
same the other way around, yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Americans being like, they speak Spanish there, right? And I'm like,
Ri
nope,
nope.
never have they ever spoken Spanish. But thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having interest.
And so, um, being out there since what time when did you go out there? 2012,
Yep.
2011? Yeah,
2012.
2012. And I think I asked this before, and so since we've last talked, you actually have had a chance to come back into the States
Yeah.
and visit. How did it feel? How did it feel to come back and, and see what it looked like over here and then go back home.
Yeah. Well, outside of the weather, it was nice to visit. I won't belabor that one anymore. We arrived in the middle of December and we stayed till about the middle of January. We got a good solid, 4
Now you
weeks.
what city were you in? What state?
Yeah, so we visited Ohio is
Ohio.
where my
Oh yeah,
wife's
so you got
not
some
majority.
you got some snow. You got some snow in Ohio.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. We got some family that lives in Ohio and West Virginia. We have family that lives in other parts of the US, but those were the two areas we had time because we also interjected right at the end a trip to Disney World because
Oh.
our kids were just at the right age to where our daughter hadn't turned. She was 11 at the time.
Mhm.
Son had just turned 9, and I was like, we wait too much longer. Our daughter's going to be too old for it, and it's just going to ruin it. So it was the perfect age, exciting, loved it. We definitely got COVID while we were there, as is tradition with anyone I think that spends too much time in Florida. So it was good. It was a good trip. It was. I I mean this in the most lovingly way possible. That U.S. is now a nice place to visit.
It's
It's
now.
it's it's now a place where we have our friends, we have our family that we love to see, but we've gotten accustomed to just the cultural
Yeah.
differences, I guess, or even just the ways of life, the ways of now. I will say that I live in the city of Sao Paulo. It's too big for me. I'm only here because God made me come here, because circumstances, because our kids' education was a factor as well. And the school here is a non-denominational school that provides both American and Brazilian education to our kids. And so for my wife and I, that was something that we, just decided together that was a priority. And we really feel like God opened the doors for us to be here. She's a teacher there. I'm now remembering that when you asked about me and my family, I only talked about myself. Sorry,
Mhm.
Mindy, Natasha, and James. I love you, and they're doing great. They go to school 5 days a week. My wife teaches AP psychology, literature, and regular English. My daughter is a soon to be basketball star. Also plays soccer for her team.
Nice.
She had a breakout game this last week where she brought the team from behind,
Wow.
and she was the 4-point difference that made them going from losing to winning.
Wow.
And she's in 7th grade. It was awesome. Like, it was a proud daddy moment. But
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
my son he's like a mini me. I play video games with him the most. Talk about nerdy stuff the most. He's just a little ball of energy. He's the only difference between him and I is he's got red hair. And
You're watching the Love Thy Neighbor Podcast Network. We had talked last time. We were talking about how things were so restricted. What does it look like
Right.
now as far as COVID and all that kind of stuff? What's going on out there now?
I think now it's become more of an endemic, I think is the term that we would use, where it's just a way of life.
Yeah.
I took my son actually to a clinic the other day, and he had a cough, and it was kind of barking cough.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, we can't just ignore this. He doesn't have a fever. He doesn't have really any other symptoms, but man, when that hits your chest, it just doesn't sound good. So I took him to a clinic, and the first thing they did was say, we got to test him for COVID. And I'm like, oh, right. That's
Right.
definitely still a thing. I just totally,
Right.
I don't even think about it. I'm like, his kids in his class, kids in his class and my daughter's class have had cases of influenza
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like
Influenza.
that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I was just like, I thought we were going to go in that direction, but they were like, nope, we got to test for COVID. And they're like, no, he's good. They listened to his lungs. They listened to him, talked to him. And he was, they're like, just keep taking cough syrup. It should clear up in a few days. So yeah, I would say for the most part, like I said, other than hospitals and public transit, people, don't wear masks. People have gone back to hugging and kissing, as is Brazilian. There are some people that, are a little more apprehensive about it. A lot more people shake hands
Right.
than I think used to overall. So it has created a little bit of distance between people relationally, and at least in terms of how they interact with each other, as neighbors, as it were, to use one of your buzzwords.
That's it.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, so I would say it's gotten the new normal is where it is now.
Okay. 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 Um, Now I think we had talked probably uh, through text message over the summer. You had a friend that was coming in to
Yeah.
visit, and he had kind of a little ordeal with maybe COVID, maybe not COVID,
Oh
type
man,
situation,
what a
trying to
mess.
come in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, my yeah,
mhm.
my buddy Patrick, he writes me. He's like, "Hey man, I just got to take this COVID test, and then I'll be good to go. Like I'm gonna be packed up. I'm gonna go. Here we go." And he calls me, and I'm like, this isn't good. Why is he calling me? It should have
Right,
just been a message. Hey,
right,
negative COVID. And
right.
he's like, they say I have COVID, and I don't have COVID. I don't know what to do.
He said they
And
say I have COVID and I don't have COVID.
yeah, he's like, I have no symptoms whatsoever. Like I feel fine. I feel great. There's nothing happening.
Wow.
And it said he had COVID. So he got a second opinion. His family doctor took care of him, did another COVID test, and it came back negative. And what's funny is he had started with one of the, I think it's the PCR, where it's like a 48-hour test where
Yeah.
you send it in and it takes up to 48 hours. And that one didn't. That one was it was getting delayed for some reason. And so he
Okay.
did a rapid test with that same company, and that's when it came back positive. And then he did the rapid test with his family doctor, negative, and that's all he needed, just one document that said negative.
Right.
He came here a day later. The company's original test with the PCR said, "Hey, by the way, you don't have COVID." And he's just like, "Well, thanks. That should have been 2 days ago. What do you?"
Right.
They're like, "Yeah, we found it. We found your sample in our refrigerator or somewhere. It's laying around."
Laying
And
around.
it's like, "Well, not using you guys anymore for any kind of testing." So
Oh
yeah,
man.
we had a good time though. It was great to have him here, and just to introduce a friend to my neck of the woods,
Yeah, yeah.
somebody I know, someone that's not there because it's a church program or
Right.
mission trip, someone I know personally. It was just so cool. Be like,
Yeah.
look, this is my best friend. Like this is like getting to introduce Brazilians and American or
Right.
Brazilians to my friend Patrick. It was so good.
Yeah. Bringing them into your element, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
a beautiful thing. I'm like, well, I'm glad that worked out because I remember getting the text message from you like, "Hey, we need to pray because I don't know what's going on. It's kind
Yeah,
of goofy right now. They're saying he has COVID." Oh man, so it was good to hear that worked out and he got
yep.
to come and experience, Brazil and hang out and I think so. What would you so being in Brazil? What are the things that make Brazil Brazil for you?
Mm,
Like, hey, this is Brazil. Like when people come to Colorado, it's the mountains, right?
right.
You got to check out the mountains. You got to
Yeah.
hit the slopes and ski. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, what are the things for Brazil for you that make Brazil Brazil?
Um, I would say that's a tough question, if I'm speaking honestly. I think what makes Brazil Brazil, one is a a, a passion for discovery.
Mm,
I feel like they are fascinated by everything, and
wow.
like where I could talk about, I don't know. I can't even think of a specific example, but where I would talk about I don't know, something happened in high school with an American and be like, "Oh yeah, that happened to me too. It's cool." And you talk to a
Right.
Brazilian about it, and they're like, "Wow, really? That's cool. What else happened?" Like
Right.
they're totally engaged in conversation. I would say some of the most, it's not across the board, but some of the most publicly warm people that you can, like, even like in traffic, you know, people cut you off, people get angry. I mean, I get some road rage, and I've encountered Brazilians that get road rage, but for the most part, even like if people get out of the car and they're like, sorry. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So there's traffic in Brazil?
Oh,
He
man.
said, "Oh
Yeah.
man."
Oh, don't get me started on that. I could go a long time. I have to pray. I have to pray a lot for motorcyclists and their salvation and my level of tolerance for them, because the way it works here, you have your lanes of traffic, and then you have motorcycles that can just go anywhere. They go on sidewalks, they go in between traffic, they go around cars like bobbing and weaving.
Wow.
They fill in the empty space at a red light. Like there's
So
not
they'll
like
pull
they
up
just
right
don't
next to
they
you,
don't
like
wait in line. Yeah. Oh, they'll knock your mirror back, like,
oh man.
and then they'll
Really?
blame you. They'll blame you for not being far enough over, not giving them enough space. They'll shake their heads at you, judge you. Oh, it's
Oh
yeah.
wow.
I have to pray, and which it's not a bad thing. Having, you know, wanting to pray more when I'm driving, you know, praying for their souls, praying that they learn some kind of lesson that doesn't kill them, but that also humbles them, you know, that kind of stuff. But yeah, with Brazilians, I would say the excitement of discovery, passion is definitely a thing with the people. They just live by passion, and they get excited about life. I would say they're a people about the journey, not the destination.
Right.
Oftentimes, and I think that's a lot of what makes Brazil special, is also what makes just, I think, Hispanics and Latin America special, is just in terms of Americans don't like how, you know, maybe things don't start on time, or my father-in-law, when he's lived with us and visited again, it drives him crazy. He always wants to get there early, and then nobody's there. They haven't even unlocked the doors to the church, even though it's supposed to start in 10 minutes,
10
whatever the
minutes.
service or thing going. That they're just about the journey. And most of the time when people are late for something, it's not because they're lazy or anything. They were talking to someone, or
Right.
they were focused on something else.
Helping
And
somebody on the side of the
yeah,
road, maybe. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You
So
know?
yeah, I would say just passion, relationships, that's, and then an appreciation for, you know, food in a relational aspect. So
Yeah.
they don't just eat to eat,
Having a
they
meal
eat.
together.
Yeah, having a meal together, which can get you into trouble, because every time you visit with a Brazilian, they provide food, or if you don't provide food, they'll provide food.
Yeah,
So
it's
food's
not a
always
bad
present.
thing.
Yeah, unless you, as long as you're not meeting with multiple Brazilians a day. If you're just meeting with one Brazilian a day,
Right.
but if you're like, you know, as a pastor or missionary, I've sometimes accompanied other pastors, and you get filled up with a lot of coffee, a lot of cake.
Not,
And by the end, you got the shakes. You
oh man.
gotta be like, I'll just have some water, thank you.
Now what's a church service look like in Brazil?
So that is one where I think the Brazilians sometimes don't venture very far outside of tradition, outside of the norm. It pretty much is just, it's pretty much a modern worship set, except the sermons are twice as long. They will they will preach sermons 45 minutes to an hour easy, and I would say halfway, if not a third of the way through that 1 hour sermon, my brain has melted, because I just can't process everything they're saying, because it's like nonstop. And but pretty much they have a very dynamic worship service most of the time, like clapping and dancing
Right.
and
Wow.
moving. It's very rare that you go into a church where everybody's just
Right.
singing and nothing else is moving. It's everybody's moving, the church is moving. It's a very active experience. Worship is very
Yeah.
emotional, very heartfelt most of the time. So yeah, I would say that's a unique aspect of it. Those are the two unique aspects, maybe, is passionate worship, and then very passionate, long-winded sermons that you know, are very dynamic at times and very passionate, but other times it's just like, you just preached 3 sermons. So maybe next time split that up, focus yourself. So yeah.
Yeah, I had watched this video one time of someone going over to, I don't know if it was China or Japan, to preach, and they said, well, what should I preach? And they said, well, just preach the Bible. And he
Yeah.
just preached, started in Genesis and went for about 4 hours, and they took a break, and he came back and preached another 4 hours. And they're like, what is going on? Why do they want us to preach so long? Because, well, over there they didn't have Bibles. And so
Yeah.
basically this was their opportunity
Yeah.
to hear the Bible,
Yeah. And there might be, here in Brazil, that might be kind of a, like I said, what was tradition, preaching a long time, because this is the only time they're going to hear and be totally engaged in the word. And I tell you what, I find that Brazilians overall, their attention span, at least based on their look, like in their ability to like pay attention, it's much better than mine or my American brethren. Like, yeah, like I get the dozing off elbow from my wife when I'm like
you're like,
dozing off. She's like, stop it, quit dozing off, pinch yourself, chew some gum, do something. You're
right,
embarrassing me. Yeah.
Even after you've been out there a while, your tolerance hasn't grown,
No.
He said no. He said
No. I mean, I guess it has a little bit, but I still have my moments.
okay, yeah. So passionate worship, energetic. That would make sense to me, because I think for the most part in America, that type of everybody sit and listen and be quiet. Yeah, that's probably more American than anywhere else. I think if you go anywhere else in the world, there's going to be a lot more enthusiasm and engagement,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
just
And
because, you
you
know.
mentioned the being quiet during the sermon or during the service. Oh my goodness. There have been times where I've just wanted to turn around and look at people in the congregation and be like, can you stop talking to each other? This pastor, the speaker is like pouring their heart out or talking, and they're just like, oh, we're just talking about whatever over here. Cause it's relationship again, the nearest vicinity. Hey, I haven't seen you at all this week. Let's talk while during the service. So yeah, it's and then kids, I mean, I've never heard anyone I've hardly seen anyone shush a kid. Like they distract them with something or whatever, but you just got to deal with it.
But they won't say, be quiet, be quiet. No.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, let's bring this thing in for a
Yeah.
landing. If okay, if someone was wanting to take a mission trip to Brazil, and maybe they weren't a part of your denomination, how would they go about doing that? Where would they get information? How would they get out? How would they set that up?
It's a good question. A very good question. Um I think the best option would be to kind of do something that they need to build they need to build a relationship with someone in the other country,
Right.
because you have to have someone to receive you and to
Right.
vouch for you. Like, when you do customs forms, you have to give an address. You don't want to give like a hotel address or whatever. Um, but I would say that you would want to find out, whether it's in your friends group or your church group or whatever, who has a connection to somewhere in some country, whatever that country. It doesn't have to be Brazil, but
Right.
what is the connection? And and it doesn't matter, it can be somebody's cousin. You got to have one. It's not about, you can't just go to the country and just be like, we're here, we want to help, let's go.
Right.
Because real mission should be, I know there's a time and place for going out pioneering, but in most countries that's not really a good idea anymore. You want to be more sensitive to the needs,
Yeah.
give an opportunity for an invitation. I think one thing that has to happen for the church in general, and one thing that I've been pushing more in the denomination I'm a part of, is making missions more reciprocal, making it so that both sides are giving and receiving. It's not just about those who have helping those who don't have. That's a very old mentality, and I think that that's not just missions. That should be mission. That should be like not just missions that I'm doing missions. That should be like evangelism. That should be
Right.
relationship. Like relationships should be reciprocal. And so I would try to work that connection to the point of understanding what do they need, how can we help them, how can we serve them, with also thinking what do they have to offer? What can we learn? And a lot of that you're not going to learn till you're here. But yeah, getting a contact in a country, whatever country that is, and then just Googling I mean, it's better to use an organization mainly for like insurance and stuff.
Yeah.
But I am sure, and unfortunately, because I've just worked with a denomination, I don't have a good link or suggestion. But I'm sure if you Googled international insurance, or even if you talk to the person who's, because like when people come to Brazil, honestly, you don't really have to come with insurance because they have social health and it actually works pretty well. I've used it for at least half of the time I've been here
Mm-hmm.
with little to no issue. So push comes to shove, if a country, if you're knowledgeable enough of it or the person you talk to, you trust their opinion, I would say you kind of at least cover all your bases. You get what you need. And in terms of insurance, in terms of doing your homework and what's, looking up the CDC guidelines, looking up all that stuff to, what vaccines and things you need to be in the country and not put yourself at risk or put the people of the country at risk. But yeah, I would say those are just, I guess, a couple tips on how to do that.
Nice.
Not connected through your church. Once you're connected through a church, it can be a little easier, but also more complicated to work through all the red tape and the processes and things.
Nice.
Personally speaking, if I were doing a mission trip on my own with some buddies, I would just get a tourist visa, just say, hey, we're coming here to tour the country, and then visit whoever that contact is and then go from there. Like,
Right.
obviously you don't want it to be like, hey, we're here, but make a plan with them.
Right.
As long as you got a couple people on each side that have an expectation and understanding of what should happen, what's going to happen, you can accomplish a lot. So.
Yeah. Do you need to be familiar with, maybe some uh basic law, basic rules, in other countries, or is that just something that you'll figure out once you get there?
Yeah, I think with basic laws and like what's expected, you can do research, but that you would want to rely on whoever that contact is. That's why I'd say
Yeah.
try to find any contact. And even if they're not a reliable contact, they probably know someone that's reliable within the country. So you can rely a lot on your hosts to help with that. I would say the big thing you would want to do is to learn some of the language, learn some of their history, learn some of what's their current events that's been going on, and go in with just both a learner and an interested mindset, to where you're wanting, like Brazilians love when Americans come and speak the language. Of course they giggle and it's funny, you have an accent.
Right.
We have an accent. I don't say you have, I still have an accent. But they're very understanding. They're very forgiving of mispronunciations and really bad language speaking. They just
Yeah.
appreciate that someone's trying to learn their language. So
Yeah, it's I think I don't know. I was kind of surprised that you have kept your
I've
American
also been
accent,
surprised.
that, and being there so long and knowing that you
Yeah.
probably have to speak the language a lot. You're yeah, you don't seem like it. I would never know.
Right. Yeah.
I would
And a
never
lot of
know.
that comes down to gifting too. Like, we could have, and I'm sure you've already had a podcast talking about the gift of tongues, but
Yeah.
from the mindset of just speaking other languages, the gift of tongues is something that needs to be present for you to really pick it up. My wife has a gift of tongues. I do not. I have the gift of uh, having no shame and just being a bull in a china shop and just being myself and just saying whatever comes out of my mouth and learning through mistakes.
Yeah.
That's my spiritual gift.
That's a
I don't think that's biblical, but I'm just gonna call it that.
We'll call it boldness.
Yes, boldness,
Yeah.
the spiritual
Yeah.
gift of boldness. You're right.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Amen. Well, Lucas, man, this has been great. This has been
Yeah,
amazing. I'm hoping that we kind of gave people a glimpse into,
yeah,
'cause, unless you go there, unless you experience it, you can't really fully, grasp it. But hopefully we gave people kind of just a look at what it's like to be a missionary, to maybe go and take a mission trip, maybe we gave them a little bit of information to kind of get them started if they want to.
Yeah, for
They
sure.
want to try. So, if you could pray for our listeners, those that have a heart for missions and that may desire that God would open that door and bless them.
I would love to.
Amen.
Let's pray. Father, right now I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk with Anthony, to have a chance to share a little bit about what you're doing through my family and I in Brazil. And God, right now, I just want to pray for the Love Thy Neighbor community, the people listening right now. God, maybe there are some that are listening right now that have felt a pulling on their heartstrings or a desire to look more into being a missionary or going to the far ends of the earth for the gospel. And God, right now, I pray for those who have felt that, and just pray, God, that you would make your will clear, and you would give them wisdom, that you would help them to just be guided by your presence, be guided by your truth, that you would bring people into their lives, God, to walk alongside them, to guide them, Lord, and to help them, God, to take steps of faith towards that, even if that's just talking about it with someone else and praying about it and acknowledging that call. I pray that you would be with them in that, God, and others that maybe don't think they have a call, God, but uh, would still want to go somewhere. God, I just pray that you would give wisdom, that you would give guidance, that you would open doors and give opportunity, Lord, and for all of us, God, I just pray that we would all have opportunities, God, to leave our comfort zone, to leave our culture, even if it's just our family or day-to-day life culture, and enter into the lives of someone else whose culture we don't understand, whose way of life we don't get. God, I just pray that you would give us opportunities to do that, even on a local level, whether in the U.S., Brazil, or other countries, God. And so, God, I lift all those up who are listening today and ask that you guide them to see and understand how they could be salt and light for you. In Jesus' name we pray all these things. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, it's definitely been a pleasure.
Equally.
You guys that are listening, remember to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Thanks again, Lucas. Till next time.
Até mais.
You're watching the Love Thy Neighbor Podcast Network.